Chapter 4. We haven't done proper witchy stuff in ages. Vivi stood in Gwyn's bedroom, feeling the oddest sense of déjà vu. It wasn't like she hadn't been in here tons of times since the night of all that weirdness after Reese. She had. But it was the first time she'd been back up on an autumn night with a salt circle on the floor and magic afoot. "Gwyn, our entire lives are witchy shit," she reminded her cousin as she attempted to sit on the floor in her pencil skirt, but Gwyn just shook her head, turning around with her arms full. Vivi spotted at least 3 candles, an altar cloth, a silver bowl, and a small black bag done up with a gold clasp. "No, I mean the real deal kind of witchy shit," she said, lowering herself to the hardwood coven-type stuff. Getting the craft on. Smiling, Vivi hiked up her skirt, crossed her legs, and took a sip of her wine. "Not since the night Reese and I broke up," she said. And Gwyn waved her off. "That didn't count. That wasn't real magic. The last time we did real magic was senior year, maybe?" That Beltane. Remembering, Vivi nodded. "Okay, well, as long as we don't accidentally summon demons, I'm in. It was just that once, and technically it was a very pissed-off elemental spirit." Vivi shot Gwyn a look over the rim of her glass. "Do you remember how long it took my eyebrows to grow back?" Dropping her pile of supplies onto the little rug in the middle of the floor, Gwyn heaved a sigh. "Vivi, if you bring bad energy into this, it's not going to work." "I feel like you're just saying that to get out of the eyebrow conversation." Gwyn didn't reply to that, opening the little black bag and pulling out a deck of tarot cards. "Ooh," Vivi said, reaching for the deck, but Gwyn batted her hand away. "No touching, not until I'm ready." "But I haven't seen this one before," Vivi said, and Gwyn grinned, spreading the cards out on the floor. Even in the dim lamplight, their colors practically glowed, and Vivi caught a glimpse of a diaphanous white gown on the Empress, bright butter yellow on the sun. Gwyn had been painting her own cards for years, ever since they were teenagers, and not for the first time. Vivi felt a little pang in her heart looking at her cousin's handiwork. Not just because the cards were beautiful, although they definitely were, but because Gwyn always seemed so connected to her craft in a way that Vivi had just never felt. Sure, she liked doing the occasional spell, and her little apartment over the store contained more candles than was probably wise, but she'd never had this. Never had what Gwyn and Elaine had, this ease with magic. Both of them did spells, big and small, as easily as breathing, and yet every time Vivi used magic, even the little things like her anti-cheater spell, something in her paused, held back. There were times she wished her mom had been a little more open about the whole witch thing. Maybe if she'd grown up doing magic, she'd feel more comfortable with it now. Shaking her head, Vivi pushed that thought away. It didn't matter now. She had exactly as much magic as she liked. No more, no less. Gwyn had set the silver bowl on the rug and affixed a fat white candle to the bottom of it. Now she ran her hands over her cards, humming softly as she slid one from the deck. The magician was dressed in bright red robes, a white crystal crown on her head, and Vivi smiled as she realized the figure was clearly modeled on Elaine. She could even spot Sir Perival winding himself around her ankles, his eyes a glittering green. "So," Gwyn said before taking a sip of her own wine. "First things first, we find out if you have any bad luck right now." "Bad luck," they send Reese. "Good luck. It's one of his brothers, or his dad. Maybe a hot cousin." "That seems much more likely," Vivi admitted, as Gwyn lit the candle in the silver bowl. "I mean, Reese hated dealing with family stuff. I can't imagine he'd want to come back here. Not after I threw his own pants at him and called him. Something bad?" "We'll soon find out," Gwyn said, pulling 4 more cards from her tarot deck. She slid the magician in with them, her long fingers dexterous as she shuffled the 5 cards, sliding them back and forth over one another, until Gwyn had no idea just where the magician had ended up. "Okay, the simple part. Turn over these cards one at a time," Gwyn said, laying the cards face down on the floor. "If the magician pops up in the first 3, bad luck." Frowning, Vivi studied the cards in front of her. Gwyn had painted the backs too, a swirling pattern of green and purple spirals, and Vivi let her fingers dance over them for a moment before turning over the first card. A man stood at the edge of a cliff, one foot lifted like he was seconds from stepping off, his eyes blue over the rim of a pair of sunglasses, his shirt unbuttoned to the middle of his sternum. Vivi's heart did a little flip-flop in her chest, because that sure was a familiar face. Then she looked at what card it was. "The Fool?" she asked, lifting her eyes to Gwyn's. Gwyn just shrugged, leaning back on her hands. "I take inspiration from everywhere, and when it came time to paint that one, he just leapt to mind." Am I wrong? The Fool was all about risks and chances, leaping without looking, so no, Reese was not necessarily a bad model for that card. Still, so is this bad? Vivi asked. She lifted it between her thumb and index finger, shaking the card slightly. Does this mean it is him? No, Gwyn said firmly, shaking her head. Well, I mean, probably not. I don't know. Let's see what the next card is. Vivi turned over the next one. The magician, wearing her aunt's calm face, stared back up at her. Rhiannon's tits, Gwyn said, sitting up so fast that her knee nearly clocked her glass. They are sending him. Vivi wished her pulse hadn't suddenly sped up at that, wished her hands weren't trembling slightly as she reached out to flip over the last 3 cards. The star, which was clearly Vivi, standing on a desk in a classroom in a polka dot dress, an apple in one hand, a glowing orb in the other. The tower, Elaine's cabin, but with a massive crack up the center of it, half the house sliding off a cliff, and last, the moon, which was a werewolf. Vivi asked, holding up the card for Gwyn, who rolled her eyes and plucked it from Vivi's fingers. Do not question my artistic vision, Vivian, she said, sliding the moon along with the other 4 cards back into her deck. And finally, Vivi said, so this is dumb. The 2 of them sat there on the floor, staring at the candles. Gwyn glanced up. Which part? Him coming? As finding our he's coming? You feeling weird about him coming? How many times I've said the word coming? All of the above, Vivi said, rising to her feet and sliding her skirt back into place. Look, this was always bound to happen. His family founded this town and the college where, let me add, I happen to work. He's part of this place. I knew that when I got involved with him, and she lifted a finger in the air, I have had many boyfriends since him. To be fair, you've had 3, which is more than 2, which is a couple, so therefore as many. Gwyn, whose side are you on? Yours, Gwyn hastily acknowledged. 100%. I's no big deal, Vivi went on as she searched for her shoes near Gwyn's bed. He'll come. He'll do his whole Founder's Day. Ugh, look at me, I'm fancy thing. And stuff will go back to how it was. I can continue to live a Penhallow-free life. Except for the part where there's a statue to his ancestor downtown, and also your workplace is literally named after his house. Except for that. Remember when we pretended to curse him? Gwyn asked, grinning as she shuffled her cards, and Vivi snorted. Something about his dimples and never being able to find a clitoris again. Which, Gwyn said, tilting her head to one side, now that I think about it, was actually more a curse against any women he dated, and I kind of regret that. For the sisterhood. Laughing, Vivi shook her head. It doesn't matter anyway. I may have done the occasional light social media stalking, and he seems ... fine. Better than fine, really. He was still handsome, apparently ran some super chic travel business that took groups all over the world to do various glam things, and probably still knew exactly where the clitoris was. She and Gwyn had just been 2 silly, drunk witches, joking around and lucky that no actual magic had been employed. Whatever had happened with that candle had been a duke, clearly. Vivi had just reached down to slip on her boots when Gwyn's bedroom door flew open. Mom! Gwyn yelped, leaping to her feet. Did the Daniel Spencer incident teach you nothing? Elaine just waved a hand at that, even as Sir Perival lurched into the room, meowing balefully at all of them. Well? She asked, and Vivi walked over to Gwyn's desk, leaning against it. Cards say yes, she said, and Elaine looked briefly at the ceiling, muttering something under her breath. But Vivi said, pointing with her empty wine glass, as I was just telling Gwyn, it's actually not that big of a deal. We're all grown-ups here, and it's not like he'll stay long. I'm telling you, I bet I won't even see him.